There is a plant growing in sidewalk cracks, along fence lines, in abandoned lots, and between the rows of American soybean fields right now. It produces more protein per acre than almost any crop currently grown at scale in the United States. Its seeds contain every essential amino acid the human body requires. The leaves carry more iron and calcium than spinach, and every spring American homeowners, farmers, and municipal groundskeepers spend enormous sums of money trying to kill it. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations has formally recognized this plant as one of the most promising solutions to global food insecurity. In 1975, the National Academy of Sciences in Washington published a landmark study identifying it as one of the best underexploited crops for feeding the developing world. Nutrition researchers across 4 continents have confirmed that its protein quality rivals that of milk, and in the United States, where it grows abundantly and without invitation, it is classified as a noxious weed. We call it pigweed. Its real name is amaranth. That name comes from the ancient Greek word amaranthos, meaning the one that does not fade. The Greeks were not being poetic. They were being accurate. Amaranth does not behave like most plants. It thrives in drought. It grows in depleted soil where other crops would fail. It handles heat that would wither wheat or corn. A single plant can produce between 200,000 and 500,000 seeds in a single growing season. And those seeds, once dried, can be stored for years without refrigeration and without losing their nutritional potency. The Greeks observed a plant that simply refused to die. They named it accordingly. But the Greeks were not the first to understand what amaranth could do. That distinction belongs to the civilizations of Central and South America, and particularly to the Aztec Empire. For the Aztecs, amaranth was not a minor supplement or a secondary grain. It was one of the 3 foundational pillars of their entire food system, ranked equal in cultural and caloric importance to maize and beans. Tribute records recovered from the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan show that conquered provinces were required to deliver an estimated 20,000 tons of amaranth grain to the emperor each year. That volume was comparable to their annual corn tribute. This was not a garnish. It was infrastructure. It was the nutritional bedrock of one of the most powerful civilizations in the Western Hemisphere, sustaining warriors, builders, priests, and farmers across a population estimated in the millions. Amaranth was also woven into the spiritual architecture of Aztec life. During sacred ceremonies, the seeds were ground, mixed with honey and sometimes with sacrificial blood, and shaped into figures representing gods. These figures were then broken apart and shared among the community as an act of communal worship and spiritual renewal. The plant was food, but it was also identity. It connected daily nourishment to cosmology, to seasonal rhythm, and to the continuity of culture across generations. And that dual role, both nutritional and spiritual, is precisely what made it dangerous to the men who came to dismantle the Aztec world. When Hernán Cortés and the Spanish conquistadors completed their conquest of the Aztec Empire in the early 1500s, they did not simply seize land and gold. They understood perhaps more clearly than most conquerors in history that controlling a people requires dismantling the systems that hold them together. And amaranth was one of those systems. The Spanish colonial authorities issued a formal ban on amaranth cultivation. Growing it was forbidden. Possessing it was punishable. Some historical accounts describe penalties as severe as the removal of hands. The goal was not agricultural management. It was cultural erasure. If the Aztecs could not grow amaranth, they could not perform their ceremonies. If they could not perform their ceremonies, the spiritual and social fabric of their civilization would begin to unravel. The strategy worked. Within a single generation, a crop that had fed millions of people across thousands of years was nearly eradicated from the entire continent. This is where the pattern becomes important. The disappearance of amaranth from the Western diet was not a natural event. It was not the result of crop failure, pest infestation, or environmental collapse. It was a deliberate act of suppression carried out by a colonial power that understood the deep connection between food sovereignty and political control. Remove a people's ability to feed themselves on their own terms, and you remove the foundation of their independence. That principle did not expire with the Spanish Empire. It runs quietly through the entire modern history of food. When industrial agriculture consolidated its grip on the American food system in the 20th century, it organized itself around a deliberately narrow set of commodity crops. Corn, wheat, soybeans, and rice became the center of gravity. These crops were not selected because they were the most nutritious or the most ecologically resilient. They were selected because they scaled efficiently within a mechanized, chemically supported monoculture system, and because they could be processed, stored, shipped, and sold at margins that rewarded large corporate operators and the input suppliers who served them. Amaranth did not fit that model. Its seeds are small and require different harvesting techniques. Its growth habit is less uniform than a commodity row crop. It does not lend itself to the kind of vertically integrated, chemically dependent monoculture that defines American industrial agriculture. So it was not merely overlooked, it was actively reclassified as the enemy. In the United States today, Palmer amaranth, one of the most vigorous species within the amaranth family, is considered the single most economically destructive weed in American cotton and soybean production. Staggering amounts of money are spent each year on herbicides specifically formulated to kill it. Chemical companies have engineered entire product lines around amaranth suppression. Research institutions receive funding to develop new strategies for its eradication. And in one of the more quietly remarkable developments in modern agricultural science, Palmer amaranth has evolved confirmed resistance to glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, which remains the most widely applied herbicide on Earth. The plant that the ancient Greeks named for its refusal to die has proven them right at the molecular level. It adapts. It survives. It outpaces the chemistry designed to destroy it. Sit with that for a moment. The agricultural industry pours extraordinary resources into fighting a plant that contains more usable protein than rice, more iron than wheat, more calcium per gram than milk, and a complete amino acid profile that most commercial grains cannot match. A plant that the United Nations has formally recommended as a frontline tool against global malnutrition. A plant that grows without irrigation, without proprietary seed stock, and without the expensive chemical fertilizers that drain household and national budgets alike. And instead of harvesting it, we engineer new poisons to eliminate it. The question worth asking is not whether that arrangement is wasteful. The question is, who profits from it? The herbicide manufacturers profit. The commodity crop system that depends on continuous chemical inputs profits. The seed companies that sell patented herbicide-tolerant crop varieties profit. The supply chains built around converting corn and soy into ultra-processed packaged food products profit. What does not profit is the household trying to stretch a grocery budget against persistent food inflation. What does not profit is the rural farming community watching its topsoil degrade under decades of chemical monoculture. What does not profit is the retired couple spending more on protein every month than they did 5 years ago, while a plant that nutritionally outperforms most supermarket staples grows unbidden in their own backyard. Amaranth is not difficult to grow. It is difficult to stop. It germinates readily in poor soil, in high heat, in dry conditions, and in disturbed ground. It does not require a greenhouse, a raised bed, or a drip irrigation system. It volunteers. It shows up. The leaves can be harvested young and prepared like spinach or chard. They are rich in vitamins A and C, in folate, in manganese, and in dietary fiber. The seeds can be dried, toasted, milled into flour, or popped like miniature popcorn. They store well in a cool, dry space. They cook quickly in simmering water, and nutritionally they compete directly with quinoa at a fraction of the cost, because amaranth does not need to be imported from South America. It is already here. It has been here for longer than the nation that spends a fortune trying to eradicate it. The safe preparation of amaranth is simple and well understood. Like many highly nutritious leafy greens, including spinach, chard, and beet greens, raw amaranth leaves contain oxalates, naturally occurring compounds that can interfere with calcium absorption if consumed raw in very large quantities over time. The solution has been known for centuries and requires no special equipment. You cook it. Boiling or steaming the leaves for even a few minutes breaks down the oxalates and makes the full range of nutrients bioavailable. The seeds carry no such concern. They are cooked like any whole grain, simmered in water or broth until tender, producing a mild, slightly nutty porridge that works in flatbread, soup, breakfast bowls, or as a plain side dish. There is no mystery to it. There is no hidden danger. There is only a basic food literacy that most Americans were never given, because the system that controls their food supply was never designed to provide it. In parts of India, amaranth never disappeared. It has been cultivated continuously for centuries under names like Rajgira and Ramdana. Ramdana translates directly to God's own grain, a name that reflects how central this plant remained to cultures that were never forced to abandon it. In sub-Saharan Africa, international development programs and agricultural nonprofits have reintroduced amaranth as a high-yield, low-input crop specifically to combat childhood protein deficiency in regions where meat is scarce and expensive. In Mexico and Guatemala, indigenous communities are slowly and deliberately reclaiming the plant that was stripped from their ancestors 500 years ago by colonial decree. The world has not forgotten amaranth. Only the United States, with all its agricultural power and institutional knowledge, has managed to classify a complete protein source as nothing more than a problem to be sprayed. That forgetting is not accidental. It is structural. When a food system is built around proprietary seeds, licensed chemical inputs, and centralized processing infrastructure, there is no room and no profit motive for a plant that grows freely, feeds completely, reproduces abundantly, and belongs to no corporation. Amaranth is not a product. It cannot be patented in its natural form. It does not require a dealer network or a licensing agreement. It does not generate recurring revenue for an input supplier. It simply grows, produces, and nourishes season after season on its own terms. In an economy organized around control, dependency, and margin extraction, a plant like that is not merely inconvenient. It is a direct threat to the business model. There is something worth sitting with in that realization. The most nutritionally complete plant within walking distance of most American homes is the same plant that the most powerful herbicide ever developed cannot kill. It fed an empire of millions. It survived a colonial ban designed to erase it from human memory and practice. It evolved past the industrial chemistry meant to eliminate it from the modern landscape. And it is still here, growing through the cracks, pushing through the margins, waiting to be recognized for what it has always been. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations did not call amaranth a curiosity. They did not treat it as a novelty or a footnote. They identified it as a crop with serious, measurable potential to address food insecurity at a global scale. That is not a fringe opinion from an activist pamphlet. That is an institutional conclusion. arrived at through decades of research, field trials, and peer-reviewed nutritional analysis. The only question that remains is why the country with the most advanced agricultural infrastructure on Earth continues to treat that conclusion as though it does not exist. Maybe the answer is simpler than it appears. Maybe the system does not fail to see amaranth. Maybe it sees amaranth very clearly and understands exactly what a free, complete, self-renewing protein source would mean for a food economy built on purchase dependency. And maybe that is exactly why, every single spring, we reach for the poison instead.